Hello everyone, Vic here with another video. Today we're talking underrated horror sequels part 2. That's right, part 1 back in the archives, but there's so many great horror sequels out there. I felt like a second video was 100% justified. Alright, let's get into the list. I'm gonna name some horror sequels that I feel like have been pushed to the wayside of the road, have not gotten the acknowledgement, the respect that they deserve. Of course, in the comments, let me know if you have any more underrated horror sequels that come to mind for you. Hit the thumbs up, hit the like, hit the subscribe, leave your comments. Alright, let's get to the list. First up on the list, and this I never thought I would say, but Children of the Corn Part 2. Now, way back about a year ago, famously or infamously, Nick Arcana had the idea for us to watch the entire Children of the Corn series. We still got a couple more to go. But I was in a sheer panic, cold sweats, waking up in the middle of the night for days prior saying, oh my God, I'm going to have to watch the Children of the Corn movies. I can't even get a good night's sleep just thinking about this. Come to find out, by complete surprise, that Children of the Corn Part 2, I ultimately prefer it over the first Children of the Corn movie. Now, that's going to sound crazy because the first movie is, legitimate, I have it in 4K in my Blu-ray collection. It has Linda Hamilton in it, you know, and Children of the Corn sequels have a reputation for being some of the worst horror sequels in all of horror history. So how is Part 2 better than Part 1? I don't know. I just think it's more entertaining. When you watch the first Children of the Corn, even though you have respect for it for being the OG, you realize about 20 minutes in that this is a boring, slow movie, and you really don't like any of the characters. And listen, with all the Children of the Corn movies, you're not going to get great acting, great characters, none of that stuff. But Part 2 has some fun death scenes. It knows what the franchise is. It's actually leaning into the cheesiness, where you can make an argument the first Children of the Corn actually is kind of taking itself a little bit too seriously. So I prefer Children of the Corn Part 2, and it's on the list. They're underrated horror sequels. If you can find it, watch it. I'm not saying watch the entire series, because that is a seventh, eighth level of hell, deep down in hell, that I don't necessarily wish upon my worst enemy. But Part 2, I would give that a chance. All right, moving on to the next movie on my list is going to be Fright Night 2. Now, we all know and love the original Fright Night, 1985. Jerry Dandridge, played by the great Chris Sarandon. We had Roddy McDowall playing Peter Vincent, one of the great horror heroes in horror genre history. And then you have a great everyman, straight man, and Charlie. You're so cool, Charlie! I don't know, what did Evil Ed say about that? I don't know, but the first Fright Night's so classic, so I don't know if everybody knows what happened to Fright Night 2. Fright Night 2 was developed to be a pretty decently budgeted theatrical sequel. They put a lot of money into the movie. They had our two main cast leads from the first movie. Well, not Chris Sarandon, because Jerry Dandridge definitely died in Fright Night. But we have our two main heroes coming back, the awesome team of Charlie and Peter. You had a solid cast here. You had a new horror villain, and she's fantastic in the movie. So the movie was actually supposed to be a pretty big sequel, but then apparently the distributor of the movie was a guy who unfortunately got murdered by his children. And this has all happened during the time when they were getting ready to distribute Fright Night 2. So what happened was Fright Night 2 sort of got lost in some shuffle, where it went from supposed to be like a decent theatrical release to being a straight-to-video release that didn't have any marketing behind it, no advertising budget. So a lot of people didn't even know Fright Night 2 was even out. Some people discovered it just walking around the video store and saw the cover and said, what the hell, there's a Fright Night 2? So you can imagine the second movie really didn't make the money back that you would expected. And then with distribution gone, there was really no thought then to move to a Fright Night 3. So, I mean, if it had been theatrical, gotten released, maybe we could have had a bigger Fright Night franchise. But as is, if you watch Fright Night 2, I'm telling you, I always thought growing up too, just thinking about it, I thought that it was going to be a low rent, low budget, terrible ripoff of the first movie. I was pleasantly surprised with how thoughtful, original, how big in scope Fright Night 2 is. It's actually a solid sequel. You can watch it as a double feature with the original Fright Night. And yes, there's a little bit of a drop off because obviously just Chris Sarandon is such a good vampire in the first one. But it's not the biggest drop off in the world. It's a great double header. I'm waiting desperately for Fright Night 2 to come out in 4K so I can grab the 4K Blu-ray of that. But if you haven't watched Fright Night 2, give it a chance. All right, moving on to, well, this one, I also didn't think this would ever make my list, but we're talking about I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. That's right, Ben Willis going to not just great lengths, but going to the biggest lengths a killer has ever gone to in order to get his victim. He's going to drag Julie and her friends all the way to the Bahamas, plan this elaborate weekend, all to get revenge. Of course, he could have just killed her on campus and saved himself about $10,000 at least that it would have taken to set up this whole damn thing up. So it's the most contrived, terrible, unrealistic, silly plot in the history of horror movies. And then, of course, you have almost as egregious as Ben Willis's plan is you have, Will Benson, the worst twist maybe in the history of slasher film. So I'm saying all this. So how the hell does this make my most underrated horror sequel list? Well, the movie's a 4.8 on IMDb. To be a 4.8 on IMDb means like you're considered one of the more worst horror sequels of all time. It doesn't deserve that. Like, it's not that bad. That's the only thing I would say. It's bad, but it's not that bad. And to be honest, in all fairness, it's pretty damn entertaining. It has an exotic, unique location. You got fun kills. You got Jack Black hamming it up. Jennifer Love Hewitt still used her screaming pipes. For some reason, they thought, "What are you waiting for?" was some kind of classic line that needed to be in every movie. It's a line to be made fun of. It's not a line you want to actually see the character say over and over again. And then Freddie Prinze Jr. gives a much, much better performance. The character of Ray is just a much more heroic, likable character in the sequel than he was in the original. We're not going to talk about what happens and the new. I know you did last summer. That's actually a separate review that we're doing actually very soon as well. I don't know. I just think it's a fun, underrated film that you can turn on, have fun with. It's better than a 4.8. Damn it, it's at least a 5.2. So, all right, let's move on to Prom Night 2. Now, the whole Prom Night franchise was one that had sort of been off my radar for a very long time. I knew that, around the time of Halloween, that Jamie Lee Curtis had done other slasher films. I never really went back and watched them. Last year, we were on an early 80s slasher kick. We watched Terror Train, The Burning, Prom Night. The original Prom Night is a very slow movie. It has a lot of Jamie Lee Curtis doing 70s disco dancing and an early 80s film. And it has a somewhat silly twist ending. But all that said, I do like the original Prom Night. But then I was, you go online, you start hearing about Prom Night, and every other comment is saying, hey, you should really watch Prom Night 2, which is something to do with a character named Mary Lou. And I thought, why the hell is this rhyming? Prom Night 2, something, Revenge of Mary Lou. I just thought it sounded like a completely ridiculous title and that it was probably going to be terrible. Eventually, me and Nick Arcana sat down and watched Prom Night 2, and pleasantly surprised to say it's a much, 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 much more fun film than Prom Night. This is the thing that, the thing we're seeing with some horror sequels that I'm talking about, because sometimes the first movie in a franchise can be really good and really serious, and for the sequels, they can't be as serious anymore because the plot line has already been established. You have all the mystery elements of it is pretty much gone because you already know the plot, the mystery is gone. So you really sometimes can't be better than the original, but you can be more fun. There's plenty of franchises where there's a sequel that's more fun than the original. Just like Children of the Corn 2 is more fun than the OG Children of the Corn, Prom Night 2 is a much more fun, entertaining movie than the original Prom Night. Man, there is a death scene in a locker room that is just excellent. And a lot of the death scenes are fun. It reminds me a lot of Carrie 2, The Rage, just the Carrie franchise. Prom Night 2, put that on your list to watch it. I'm sure it's on Tubi. All these movies are probably on Tubi. Tubi is horror heaven for horror fans, except I wish there was even a paid version where you can get rid of the ads. I would get rid of all the advertisements, pay at least $5 to $10 a month, but Tubi's much better than Shudder, I would say. All right, moving on to our next underrated horror sequel. We're going to talk about Return of the Living Dead Part 3. Now, the franchise Return of the Living Dead, it's not the best franchise because most of the sequels tend to be huge letdowns, and eventually it went down the route of straight to sci-fi sequels, and it's never a good sign when like 2 sequels come out on the same day. I think Sci-Fi one year had like Part 5 and 6 come out on the same night. Like, you're telling me you film 2 direct to sci-fi sequels and you're releasing them on the same night? It just sounds like a terrible, terrible thing. But going back to the original three movies, you had the original Return of the Dead, my favorite zombie film of all time. You had Return of the Living Dead Part 2, which is trying to build on Return of the Living Dead, trying to take some of the same things, the same elements, but the original is such a, perfect, unique, blended, zombie stew that you can't really get the taste quite there. You can't get the gumbo quite there in the sequel. So, Return of the Living Dead Part 3 does something completely different, just says, hey, let's do a different kind of movie. We're not going to try to be over the top, funny, goofy, the horror comedy. We're going to do a straightforward Romeo and Juliet style, lovers, choral lovers, will they, won't they, tragically doomed star-crossed lovers with zombies thrown in. That's what we get Return of the Living Dead 3. It actually is a teen romance, heavy on drama, still has good special effects, still has good things going on. And I have to say, it's a solid zombie film. It's a very straight edge, I would say, like not really trying to poke fun at anything there. It's different from the rest of the franchise. It feels like something more that Romero would do, to be honest. So I'm pleasantly surprised. Return of the Living Dead 3. I recommend it. Watch it, but going with the right expectations. More serious film. Don't think you're gonna get more of what you got from the first two Return of the Dead movies. All right, let's move on. Okay, next on the list we have Tremors 2. Now, of course, I'm a huge fan of the original Tremors, as we all are. Kevin Bacon, Fred Ward, that town Tremors. You got Bert in the basement talking about you broke into the wrong damn rec room. Now, what does it mean that Tremors 2 has such a following enough that even without Kevin Bacon, it was able to spawn future sequels, a whole 7-8 movie franchise, 1 or 2 potential TV shows? The Tremors franchise is pretty long lasting. I hope it goes forever. I hope we always get more and more Tremors movies, a new Tremors TV show. Somebody please release the damn Kevin Bacon Tremors TV show pilot. I'll be honest, I was bummed with the idea that Kevin Bacon wasn't in Tremors 2. I mean, yeah, it's such a good buddy comedy pairing with him and Fred Ward in the first one that you naturally expected, hey, let's bring back the whole gang back together. We got Bert, we got, Fred Ward. Why can't we get Kevin Bacon? But Kevin Bacon might have been on a bigger and better things in terms of more dramatic roles, and his film career had really taken off. So what we have in Tremors 2, I would say, is ultimately a fun sequel. It's not trying to recreate the first one. They really do take the plot line in a completely different direction while still respecting the original, but adding new things to it, different variations of the Tremors. And I gotta say, I was pleasant surprised. I haven't watched the rest of the sequels, so I still gotta dig deep into I know the saga gets more Bert-centric as we move on, and this second one has a good balance because Fred Ward is still sort of enough of a protagonist to kind of keep everything balanced out, and you can see Bert becoming more and more over the top. But still a fun character. I think Tremors 2 is definitely another one now that you can double watch with the original Tremors and have a lot of fun with. So Tremors 2 definitely has to be on the list. Okay. Unfriended Dark Web. Now, these two movies, Unfriended, Dark Web, they don't get talked about a lot. I wonder if there's not as much of an ongoing cult following for these movies as I would have expected, because I thought with the rise of sort of just technology, social media, the way people interact these days, I would have thought that the Unfriended series is sort of the perfect horror franchise that people can relate to, that people can be scared of. The idea of like, hey, yes, we don't go to haunted houses anymore. We don't go to Camp Crystal Lake. We stay in the house safely and we interact with our friends online. The fact that gets hijacked by ghosts or super secret cults and stuff like that, I would think that'd be like a relatable, scary thing for this generation. But it seems like there were some imposters, it spawned definitely some rip-off movies, but it didn't really become as big of a franchise as I would expect. And even more so, I would expect it because the first two movies of that franchise are pretty solid. The first, Unfriended, was pretty good, going down more the supernatural route, which is, of course, scary. But then the second one, Unfriended Dark Web, I would say is more about your identity. It's kind of like getting into how secure are things online, and, the risk of being online, and just really not supernatural per se, but more things that I feel like would be just as scary if they happened to you. And yeah, I'm a big fan of Unfriended Dark Web. If you haven't seen it, I would definitely say check that out. Again, perfect doubleheader with the first Unfriended. And I wish that was a franchise. I wish that they would continue on. I feel like, again, today's generation, the younger kids, should be able to have a lot of fun. And there's a lot of different ideas you can throw in there with an Unfriended franchise. So, okay, moving on to Anaconda 2. It took me a long time to watch a lot of these. It took me a long time to watch a lot of these movies. I don't know. Sometimes you just, even as a horror fan, when the first one comes to theaters and it's a big deal, and the second one goes straight to DVD or straight to sci-fi, straight to video, it just sometimes you automatically, I hate to say there was a stigma, you just automatically assume that the second movie's no good and there's gonna be a big drop off. Like always in the 90s, I always felt that way. I always felt like, oh my goodness, this is probably not as good. I'll watch it on TV someday. Anaconda 2, I have to say, it's just as much fun as the original Anaconda. And I'm somebody who likes the whole Jennifer Lopez, Ice Cube, John Voight. Anaconda, the first one, is fantastic. But Anaconda 2 is actually a lot of fun. And again, plays a lot of the same beats. It's not trying to reinvent the wheel. You're there to see a big damn snake eat people. And that has it. It has also the exotic locations. And it's just a good, solid, fun film. The main thing I'm thinking about underrated horror sequels is that horror sequels where the first movie's pretty good. You like the first movie. But then you always go back and watch the first movie, but you're never really sure about, should I throw in part 2 and do the doubleheader? Everything I'm naming here, all these sequels are sequels that, yes, you can have faith that the doubleheader will not let you down. Anaconda's finished. What do we do now? We watch Lake Placid, Deep Blue Sea? No, don't be afraid. Throw in Anaconda Part 2. Again, just so happens, it's probably on Tubi. Tubi is your friend. Moving on now. This one, okay, I try to go with the smaller things here, the smaller franchises, but I'd be amiss because, this is how we do on this channel. We always got to mention at least one of our favorite franchise things. And for me, underrated horror, we all know is true. Jason Takes Manhattan, one of the greatest boxing scenes in film history. You got Rocky 3, Rocky Balboa going up against Clubber Lang. You got Rocky 4, Rocky, solving the Cold War by taking out Drago in Russia, avenging Apollo Creed, who should never have died at the hands of Drago. And then you got number 3 with the bullet, Julius versus Jason on top of the roof in Manhattan. Julius going for the KO, or actually going for a tire out Jason, but Jason pulling the rope-a-dope, lure Julius in, and then goes for the TKO, total knockout. Head rolls down the trash can lid closes. Flawless victory, Jason. Okay, that's my favorite scene in the movie, but Jason Takes Manhattan, what can you say? Jason takes a cruise, Jason takes Vancouver, make all the jokes, all the memes you want to make about it. The bottom line is, you can't tell me, if you're a fan of Jason, you can't tell me that you're not sitting there for 90 minutes having a good time with Jason Takes Manhattan. You can't tell me that, because you're watching Friday the 13th Part 8. You're not sitting down to watch Silence of the Lambs. You're not going and expecting some high, this is not going to be in the damn Criterion Collection. You're not expecting some big, fine piece of art here, okay? This is not a Vincent van Gogh painting. Jason Takes Manhattan, for what it is a damn lot of fun. And recently I've ranked it above New Blood. I think it's better than Part 7. And Jason Takes Manhattan, damn near, it's moving up slowly into my top 5 Friday the 13th movies. I think it's just becoming an essential Jason movie. The best way I can say it is that if you think about what 5 movies in the franchise you just can't get rid of, just from iconography, like the iconic moments, the look, the legend of it. I think Jason Takes Manhattan stands above many of the sequels, so it's got to be here on the list. Finally, for today, I want to give a shout out to Seed of Chucky. When I was a relatively young lad, I saw Seed of Chucky, and I hated it. And I loved Bride of Chucky, so it was like very shocking to me that the next sequel to Seed of Chucky would be that bad. I didn't understand. Everything, as a kid, Bride of Chucky made me laugh my ass off. So I didn't understand when I watched Seed of Chucky why I didn't laugh, why I didn't have fun, why the whole movie seemed like low budget and weird and silly, and a lot of stuff with Seed of Chucky I just didn't like. I didn't understand any of it. And so I didn't watch it again for 15 years. I was like, screw this. I'm ignoring Seed of Chucky. It's up there with all the terrible horror sequels. I'm gonna not acknowledge its existence. It's freaking Batman and Robin to me. It's Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Does not exist. But then, a couple years ago, we're reviewing the Child's Play series in depth for the channel. And, no choice but to revisit Sea of Chucky, to sit down and watch it as an adult. And surprise of all surprises, this is why we love movies, because sometimes you give something a lot of space, you give something a lot of time, you change as a person, you reapproach the movie with your new personality, you sit down, it just hits you completely different than when the first time you watched it. That's what happened to me with Sea of Chucky. And now as an adult, every damn joke made me laugh. If Seed of Chucky isn't, for some reason, one of the most funniest movies I've seen in the last couple years, and it doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why, as a teenager, it didn't make me laugh, and now, as an adult, I'm like, holy cow, this movie is hilarious. Chucky's giving speeches, monologues, he's running Britney Spears off a cliff. I don't know why this movie is so funny to me, but Sea of Chucky has entered my list of underrated horror films. And no, I don't like as much as Bribe Chucky. Bribe Chucky is still far and away a better movie, but I like Sea of Chucky more than Cult of Chucky and more than Curse of Chucky. From a fun factor, it's a damn fun movie. All right, so I think that's going to be it for today on underrated horror sequels. Again, this is probably going to be like a 10-part series. There's so many damn underrated horror sequels. Give me your ideas in the comments. What horror sequels do I need to watch that maybe I haven't seen? And until next time, you guys take care.